Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
I'm Faye.
And I'm James.
So James, busy week.
I've been out and about this week, actually, which is nice. I had a trip to Norwich to watch the final of HackTed Norwich Hack Day, which was organised by Tech Educators. That was a 3-day hackathon for college students. Just some amazing projects and, you know, a lot of community service ideas for Norfolk, which was nice to see. What stood out for me was really just the UX design skills. All of the kind of MVPs look really slick and appealing, and some really nice product names and some fun strap lines. So it looks like there's some solid marketing chops in Norwich. And also presentation skills. You know, it's no joke to walk out in front of 300 people and deliver a pitch in 5 minutes. So yeah, really, really impressive. The winner was an anti-doom scrolling app called Eastern Eggs, which was based on a kind of Pokemon Go style game to get you out into nature. And it was actually developed by the youngest team to participate with just an average age of 18. So that, you know, that really reminded me of our conversation with Farbod from Phantom in episode 126. So it was really, really good. I had a great time. And then I also went out to working for a startup event, which was organised by the University of Cambridge Careers Office.
Oh, you're looking for a new job?
No.
Got enough.
Yeah, I've got enough to do, thanks. But yeah, again, it was really interesting and, you know, just good to see a really full room of people that were really engaged in the topic. So, you know, things are looking healthy, I think, for the startup ecosystem in Cambridge. The conversations was really good. You know, there was 2 panels, you know, covered things like a defined role in a kind of larger company versus a more unstructured role in a startup. Cultural fit, how you have more impact in a startup, how to pitch yourself effectively to a startup. And there were some really good tips there about showing your passion, showing that you go above and beyond, avoid using ChatGPT to do your CV and like job applications because it's obvious.
And your marketing.
And your marketing, yeah. Doorstepping team members at events, so, you know, really target who you want to reach in those companies. They build a relationship with you before you actually apply for jobs, which is always a good tip. It's always about in-person relationships, right? And just be able to demonstrate your soft skills and the ability to communicate and being dynamic in a rapidly changing environment. So yeah, it was really fun. I had a good week. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, busy week again, but just on that last bit, I think it's really important, you know, there's like this assumption that everyone knows what they're doing, but actually we have to help people to understand what those roles are, what the differences are. So it sounds like a really great event. And actually we're doing something quite similar on Next Gen in the Chambers of Commerce too. So maybe there's just this groundswell of those kinds of activities at the moment. But my week was, you know, another busy week. I did get out and about a little bit, not too much. I had a big strategy presentation for one of our clients at the end of the week, had a board meeting, a new client kickoff for a funding announcement, and I always love it when they're non-Cambridge businesses as well. Obviously, we go all over the place, and this one's something really cool out of Bristol. One of the reasons I did go out was Michelle Lamprecht hosted one of her marketing professional meetups at the Glass House. Absolutely brilliant as always. And as you would expect, I was nobbling all of the CMOs to get their companies on the podcast. So I was still out there working the podcast hard as well. And I think last week was really about prepping for a lot of activities this week. So Thursday is 21 to watch. So that'll be next week's episode. Then it's Impact Women's Day on Saturday this week. So the week is full of events, and I've managed to agree to do 2 of them in the same week as 21 to watch. I don't know quite what I was thinking, but hey, whatever. So one of them is organised by BDO. That's happening tomorrow on Wednesday. They've got a great panel that I'm going to host. So Rebecca Godfrey from Expression Edits, Vanessa Colmar, who's from ex-Invoke Capital, ex-Darktrace, Luminance. So she's a co-founder and non-exec director. Friend of the podcast, Andi Hektor, will be there from Parkwalk Advisors, and she was on the podcast back in episode 108. And Charlotte Guzzo, who's co-founder of Sanogenetics, and you might remember we spoke to her colleague Patrick Shaw way back in episode 28. I can't believe it's that far back. So that's the first one on Wednesday, 21 to watch on Thursday. And then Friday, I've got one organised by the Chambers of Commerce. And they have Sony award-winning journalist and TV radio presenter Louise Holland as the keynote person. And then an amazing panels of leaders from 4 different walks of life. So Kate Wilshire from IFM, the Institute for Manufacturing, Councillor Daisy Blackmore-Creedon. And this is interesting when you were talking about the people in Norwich. Daisy is the youngest female councillor to be elected at the age of 18. So it's so interesting to get her perspectives as well. And she's joined by Under Sheriff Alex Shafsma of Burkitt's and Rachel Nichols from Inspire Education Group. So my job is to manage the whole event during the day and then to come up with some really interesting questions from those panellists. So I'm looking forward to a very hectic week this week.
I was going to say, I feel exhausted just listening to that. So
Thank you. That's the effect I like to have on you, James.
Good luck next weekend. Hopefully you get some time to recover.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to today's news, shall we? Why don't we start with a big story that hit many of the local outlets last week and continues into this week?
Yeah, indeed it did. So Cambridge Innovation Capital have launched a new £100 million opportunity fund, which is anchored by Aviva Investors and British Patient Capital. And the idea is it's going to invest in growing deep tech and life sciences companies. The fund has already made its first 2 investments into Pragmatic Semiconductor, one of the UK's largest and most innovative chip designers and manufacturers, and Riverlane, a leading quantum error correction company. Both of those companies we talk about on a regular basis on the podcast too.
Yeah, absolutely. So with up to 20 million available per investment into later stage rounds of deep tech and life science companies, the Opportunity Fund aims to address the UK's scale-up financing gap, which we've also talked about quite a few times on the podcast. And that gap forces many of Britain's most promising companies to seek overseas funding to support their growth. So developing homegrown global technology businesses is a central theme of the government's plans to create Europe's Silicon Valley, with Cambridge at the heart of the transformation.
Andrew Williamson, managing partner at Cambridge Innovation Capital, said that they have traditionally invested in early stage opportunities around Cambridge and have seen many of these companies mature into highly commercial businesses developing proven technologies. With the new fund, we'll support our portfolio companies and scale-ups from the UK ecosystem as they reach a defining moment in their growth and at exactly the point where the UK often loses its most exciting businesses. He said, "We want to be part of that change and we're delighted to be working with Aviva Investors and British Patient Capital to achieve this ambition."
Yeah, so really exciting news, and the race is really on if the first 2 investments have already been made.
Indeed. Okay, next up, Cisco and Quantinuum are among the founding members of a new Quantum Data Centre Alliance. The Quantum Data Centre Alliance, QDA, is designed to bring together leading companies representing different layers of the quantum computing stack and create a forum on data centre scale quantum computers. By collecting complementary perspectives from across the ecosystem, the QDA presents an open community to discuss the opportunities and challenges on the road to building large, scalable and robust quantum computing services.
Founding members of QDA are Cisco, New Quantum, NTT Data, OQC, QFox, Quantinuum and QEra. The QDA will host an inaugural in-person event in 2025 to share insights and explore topics such as distributed architecture, scaling, standardization and interoperability. You can register your interest at qda.global.
And finally, it wouldn't be a news update without an update from ARM. They've launched the world's first ARM v9 Edge AI platform optimized for IoT with the new Cortex A320 CPU and Ethos U85 NPU, enabling on-device AI models over 1 billion parameters and earning support from industry leaders including AWS, Siemens and Renesas.
Yeah, the new platform boosts performance by up to 70% and enhances efficiency, performance and security in IoT applications like industrial automation and smart cameras. An ARM spokesman said the AI revolution is no longer confined to the cloud. As our world becomes increasingly connected and intelligent, from smart cities to industrial automation, the need to process AI workloads at the edge is not just advantageous but essential.
Super. So now on to today's episode. Last week, James, you talked about meeting Andi Hektor from GScan. And next thing I know, you've not only met him, you've recorded an episode. So I guess this one is over to you and I can just tune in like everyone else.
Joining us today is Andi Hektor, co-founder and chief science officer at GScan. Andi, thanks for coming onto the podcast today. Why don't we start by getting to know you a little bit better?
Yeah, thank you, James, for having me. Yeah, my background is from particle physics, so I would say that in deep tech it's not unusual. I have spent more than 20 years, 20 very sweet academic years in particle physics. Started from Estonia, from University of Tartu. Then I had short visiting PhD periods in London, in UCL, in Sweden, in Uppsala, in Helsinki, Finland. And then also I got involved to the big particle physics center in Geneva, in Switzerland. It's a very wonderful place called CERN. It's home of many big experiments, really wonderful experiments. It's a top science. It's very deep fundamental particle physics on one side, but it's also very wonderful engineering center, starting from the civil engineers, ending with any kind of, vacuum technology, for example, a lot of data modeling. In these times, it was called machine learning. Nowadays, we call this AI, and so on. So it's a wonderful place to really create new ideas and develop new ideas.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really impressive academic career you've had. Did you always think you were going to be a scientist? Were you into science from a very young age?
Yeah, it's kind of funny that I got my family. We don't have scientists, to be honest. So academic culture was something new to me. I was a small kid. I got already excited about science. I read a lot of popular science magazines and so on. Yeah, I was really keen to get scientists. Also, engineering was also very nice. In a certain moment, I got to decide between the IT and physics, and also chemistry was very interesting to me. To be honest, I never thought I will be in certain moment. I will be also working at a startup. So this was the new thing in my life. Now I can say that both roles, they are very creative. Scientists, of course, you have to create a lot of new ideas. You have to develop your ideas. And I would say the startup life is in some sense very similar, but culturally on the other hand, very, very different.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect segue, because my next question was going to be, many successful academics, they don't go on to become entrepreneurs and start their own companies. So what was that kind of trigger point for you to take that leap into entrepreneurship?
Different reasons. And when I started to think about that, and as my age is already 40 plus, so someone said that it's just a middle-age crisis you're having. But to be honest, as I said, when I was young, then I was also struggling a bit between the fundamental science and engineering. When I had academic career, I started in detector technology, but I moved very quickly more theoretical science. I did a lot of work with astrophysics related topics, dark matter, dark energy, cosmology. So it started to be more and more theoretical. And in a certain moment, I really felt that it's so theoretical. I need something more practical in my life. Probably it was one reasoning. And also, I would say that science is very nice, but especially in theoretical science, like particle physics, you never saw the practical results. You get a lot of nice theoretical ideas, but the time gap between your real life discovery and your theory is so long that you get old, and even maybe your grandchildren can hopefully see the practical results. So yeah, that was one reason that I started to think that it would be nice to choose something more practical. And of course, there are the scene. As I was already in Estonia, we established a lab, particle physics lab, and so on. I felt somehow that the lab I involved, it's kind of ready, and I need something new. I need new challenge in my life. And the environment in Estonia is also very startup friendly. And a lot of my former colleagues, they had already their own startups. Maybe there was also a kind of small drop of jealousy behind this decision.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, yeah, let's move on to Estonia then. As you say, you're from Estonia. You founded GScan in Estonia. We haven't actually discussed, the Estonian startup scene on the podcast to date. So it'd be interesting just to spend some time looking at that. I'm aware of the Skype legacy in Tallinn with, a lot of the engineering talent that was behind Skype, and also the startup Wise Guys Accelerator is quite well known across Europe. But, what's your perspective? Is there a good supportive ecosystem from like universities and government to support entrepreneurs? Walk us through, what the Estonian startup scene looks like.
The first thing, of course, what is Estonia is a small country. So the ecosystem itself is small, but on the other hand, it's kind of powerful. And I saw some news story about the Estonian ecosystem, and there was comparison between different ecosystems in Europe. And they said that Estonia is the smallest kind of complete ecosystem that you can find in Europe. So there are all the elements around, but it's tiny. But also it means that we have a lot of money per startup in some sense. So it's a nice place to be. The starting point, I was PhD student then. I remember the Skype and all this fuss around this, and it was very big thing in Estonia. But also it kicked off. There was a lot of kind of people thought then that maybe this is one case and that's it. But luckily, the situation was very positive in the sense that it created a new wave of startups. Now we can already say that we have not even third, but fourth generation of startups there, starting somehow from Skype. I don't know. It's a bit like I like to compare the academic life. As in academic life, you have families. You have one famous guy or lady doing something, and then create really kind of family tree. Startup life is very similar in this sense.
Yeah, I guess there's parallels to the PayPal exited co-founders of PayPal and all of the companies that spawned. I guess similar things happened in Estonia from Skype.
Yeah, it's very similar. It's created a lot of, but also it means that environment has to be, let's say, suitable. I know also some cases in some other countries, they had very successful startup, but it doesn't create in some reasons, there are no ecosystem following. But luckily in Estonia, we had probably the environment is correct. And we got a lot of second generation, third generation co-founders, created new funds and so on. But also what I felt then was that Estonian ecosystem is very software centric, as Skype was platform software technology, and later we had a lot of other platform examples. Bolt is a good example. It's a platform technology, a lot of nice startups. Fintech is also very strong, as Estonian ecosystem is very strongly coupled with London City. Wise is a good example in this line. But deep tech wasn't very, I can't say popular. People started to talk a lot about that, but it wasn't very common. But there was big change when we started already. It was already 5 years ago. Then the deep tech ecosystem, there wasn't any ecosystem, to be honest. We had kind of strong universities, but not world top ones. We had a lot of talking about that, but not so many startups around in deep tech. But and GScan, my home startup or my own startup, was one of the first one, I would say, this really deep tech kind. But if I'm thinking about these 5 years, now I can say that we have kind of decent deep tech ecosystem already. Not I can't compare this with Cambridge or some other famous ecosystems, but we are getting better and better, I would say.
Yeah, we'll come on and talk about GScan in just a couple of minutes. But before we move on to GScan, you've chosen to set up a UK company and base yourselves in Cambridge, which is obviously the reason we're talking on Cambridge Tech Podcast. So why don't we kind of walk through that decision? What's brought you to Cambridge, and what are your plans? How are you going to build the company out from the UK?
Yeah, it's a good question. To be honest, we started in London first. We had a very tiny office there, and to be honest, it's funny when we started in UK. Then I thought that I had a lot of sweet memories about the Cambridge, and as I spent a lot of time there during my academic career. But I thought maybe Cambridge is too academic in some sense. We need more, let's say, dynamic business environment like London. But we very quickly discovered that London is in some sense is not deep tech scene. It's easy to get kind of dissolved in this big city. It's very difficult to build a network, as you can see, one person one time and maybe the next time in next year. So in this way, it's kind of difficult to build a network. And also, very quickly, I learned that Cambridge is really wonderful scene. I visited Cambridge, and we had some early client contact there. We had also some early investor contact in Cambridge. So I quickly learned that, okay, Cambridge is our place to be. And yeah, then in the very beginning last year, we decided, okay, let's move our office to Cambridge. And also, we got very wonderful contacts in civil engineering at the University of Cambridge. And it was kind of, I would say, everything somehow developed natural way, and that, but also very quickly I was surprised that, I don't know, academic world time to time is very sleepy and slow. But in this time, I really learned that academic world can be also very quick. As we submitted our first applications together with my very good collaborators at the university, Erika Pärn and Ioannis Prilakis, and yeah, we got our first grant, and it was. I would say very quick development in the context of the academic world. But in parallel, also we had a lot of development in the commercial side, as we got our first recurring project with one big client. I can explain later, and so on. So it was nice parallel development, I would say.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, well that's a good time to move on and talk more specifically then about GScan. So when was the company founded, and what kind of problem are you trying to solve?
Deep dev startups typically starts not from company, but they start from idea. And the idea is usually not so much business idea, but more technological idea. And we got our idea from, luckily it wasn't coming directly from the university, but it was coming from another company. And the company was focused on software solutions for the border, all kind of border control systems. And they needed kind of universal scanning technology you can really apply automatically, not just manual scanning like we can see X-ray scanners, but you can really scan everything somehow automatically. And it was the initial idea. And then idea was developed together with this company called GoShift is the name of the company. And then the University of Tartu got involved, and I also was a bit later involved. I know the initial team well, as it's still small. Of course, if someone start to develop some kind of idea, and it's related to the particle physics, I got very early contact with them, and then it started to somewhat develop. I was following. I was also consulting them, and we somehow I already approached some people in my network, and then 2018 was the beginning of the company. But it was, I would say, it wasn't commercial start. It was the main reasons to start the company was we got some IP. We submitted our first patent application, and so we thought, okay, let's also set up the company, especially for this IP, to start to collect IP. But it took, I would say, 2 extra years. 2020, I would say, is the really start. I started to work more or less full time for the company, and the core team, the core co-founder team, started to work the company full time. So 2020 is, I would say, so we are more or less 5 years old.
And I mean, obviously, we've chatted previous to today. The technology for GScan seems to be very much focused around, construction tech and safety. So it's interesting that the origin maybe was more around border security applications. So where did that pivot come from? What opportunity did you spot there?
Yeah, it's kind of funny that we started in security and customs related world. But then I think it was 2021 I visited a bit accidentally, to be honest. I was talking about that maybe the construction industry has this technology we are developing. It's called Muon Tomography. It's very suitable to scan really large things, as historically it was one of the first famous projects in these technologies related to scanning the pyramids. So you can already see that you can scan really large things using this technology. But yeah, 2021, I visited civil engineering course about the reinforced concrete, all kinds of troubles you can have inside reinforced concrete. And of course, the biggest trouble you can have is the corrosion. In reinforced concrete, you have steel elements. And if there is corrosion, then of course you start to lose the integrity of the system. It can start to be very brittle. So, and it can cause a lot of accident, and there are no warnings. That's a big trouble in the case of reinforced concrete. You have bridge, for example, and so more or less you have no warning that it can, in a certain moment, it can just collapse. And then I got the feeling that, okay, our technology seems to be really relevant in this context. But as you know, especially in deep tech company, the pivot, it's not so easy as a hardware company. So it's not so easy to do something very quickly. And also if you have already momentum, then it's very difficult to change the direction. So it took, I would say, even 2 years to get final understanding that, okay, we should somehow refocus. We have to put all our effort. This domain is called non-destructive testing. We have to put all our effort to this domain.
So you say 2 years there. I mean, was that 2 years actually both customer and market research as well as technical development to take the technology in that direction?
Yeah, it is kind of surprising. The technology was kind of universal in this case. So in the side of technology, there wasn't big change, I would say. It was more mentality change, and also the software side is more different. As our end client now is a civil engineer, they have certain type of understanding, and we need to present our results in a certain way to make this understandable. And also, as our solution is very strongly machine learning AI based, it makes everything very, very flexible. I would say this is a nice property of AI machine learning, that you can change things kind of easy, but what is more difficult is to change the mentality of people. So I would say that people are a bit lagging behind in the sense that it's easy to change machines, but it's more difficult to change mentality.
And your technology, your product has super high impact potential, right? Because from our earlier conversations, you were explaining to me that, in the current scenario, many times structures are demolished from a precautionary perspective because they can't actually accurately analyze any corrosion within those structures. Your technology, I think, is it right to say it's unique in the market right now that actually allows you to do this analysis and make better decisions?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that in the case of reinforced concrete, if you have large objects, at the moment, if you have more than, let's say, 40 centimeters of concrete, a lot of steel inside, then there are no alternative technology. Okay, you have, but it's destructive technology. You can drill a lot of holes. It's very manual. You get also very local understanding. If you drill the hole, as you can't go far away from this. So it's a very unique position we have. But also we have to keep in mind that this technology is still very early technology. We need kind of large detectors, and also the scanning time is kind of long. But combining all these together, I can say that, and already collaborating with our first clients, I can say that this technology changed the world in the sense that we can really extend the lifetime of, for example, if you take probably the most, let's say, expensive and most visible objects like bridges, they're typically nowadays built using the reinforced concrete, and they are very expensive. And also what is very important to say that if you have critical infrastructure like bridge, one thing is the cost of the bridge, but if you close bridge, then the total impact is even more expensive than just the price of the bridge. But you stop the traffic, you have to redirect traffic and so on. So you create a lot of fuss. And also it's very expensive for society. And if you count all the money, for example, there is this famous case in US, this bridge collapse. The logistical cost is much higher than the cost of the building new bridge. So putting all this together, I would say that we can save a lot of money for society and also for our clients.
And there's also a positive environmental impact as well, right? Because you're avoiding the demolition of these huge structures and the cost of rebuilding, the environmental cost of rebuilding, and more concrete being used, right?
Yeah, that's very correct. As nowadays, the big trouble is that if you discover something is wrong with your bridge, for example, or building or some critical construction, then typically, as you don't know what is exactly wrong, then to be very safe side, you just demolish and you build a new one. But if you have technology to really see what is wrong inside, deep inside the structure, it's easy. not easy, but it's possible to fix. And this fixing is 10, maybe 100 times cheaper than to build a new one. And also, of course, we don't have yet, let's say, scientific research level statistics about how much we can save. But roughly, based on our calculations, it's possible to say that we can extend even twice the lifetime of the bridge, just knowing exactly what is the troubles related to this certain bridge, for example.
So walk us through the customer experience. You know, is the equipment so specialized that you come in and deliver this as a service on behalf of the customer? Do you sell the equipment and the training to the client so they can do it themselves? You know, walk us through that kind of customer journey.
Yeah, of course, our business model is still early, but we are pushing the idea that we are renting out our hardware plus software. I have to say that software is a very crucial part of the solution, so it's a combined solution. And the end client, they rent, as you know, in construction, especially in the construction industry, the companies, they don't like to buy things, they like to rent. And also it makes our business model more dynamic, as we can collect. We already have a cloud system. We collect all the client data to our cloud system. We can use this to improve our machine learned based software. So it's really helpful. And also there are very big historical value of this type of data. So we're really pushing the rental model. But of course, in the case of first project, we have also very strong consulting element in our business model, as this is really new technology. Our clients, they don't know yet, so we have to educate, we have to train, and so on. So it's I would say that in the case of this type of kind of complex technology, you need very strong partnership with the first clients to really develop your product, but also to educate your clients.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd love to move on to talk about sales and marketing. I mean, it sounds like the technology gives you that first mover advantage from a technical perspective. But as you just touched on, the problem of being the first mover in a new market is the burden of education falls to you, right? So, how are you going about creating the thought leadership, educating potential clients on the technology? You also reference, collecting data and doing more research and having that kind of that data to back up your claim. So walk us through your approach to that, because often we talk to a lot of science and technology-based startups in Cambridge, and it's always the sales and marketing questions that come up, right? How do you take a deep tech, company to market successfully?
I would say this is somehow toughest part of the startup life, that I can't say that it's easy to develop technology. It's also very tough, but they tend to be very technology focused. Time to time, they believe that your product is so wonderful that you don't need to market this and you don't need to sell this. I have to say this is totally wrong. But also, the selling of deep tech product is not a typical sales process. I think the deep tech solutions, they typically have they are more unique in some sense. So educational component is much more important. And also, as our product is disruptive product, so it means that you really have to change somehow the thinking of your clients. And in this case, I would say the most important thing is to find these first clients ready to co-develop, in some sense, your product. And we had a lot of luck in the sense that there was a nice innovation program called Structures Moonshot. It was financed by National Highways. The project itself is run by the Atkins Realis. And it was exactly the right environment we found. We did our first field measurement approximately 2 years ago. And then we started, I would say this is a nice core development process. We had a lot of discussion with our end client, how to make things better. And also kind of nice thing was the Structures Moonshot program. It's a bit like competition between different solutions. So you have a bit kind of competitive environment. You can't be kind of lazy that, okay, I'm only client. We have one client, we have to do something together. But we continuously know that it's a competition. There are also some other technologies coming in. This is one aspect, to have a really collaborative development. And another important aspect, at least I believe it's very important, is to use academic network to educate your client. I don't know, it can be specific, but we are working in civil engineering domain. I would say that we have very good collaboration with different universities in UK to really use this high educational power to educate clients, very important potential clients. As you know, civil engineering is very conservative in some sense, as you have to be very safe. Everything has to be very safe in this world. You have to teach this technology maybe to very young engineers. They have to accept this. So educational component is very, very important.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And just before we move on to the next topic, roughly speaking, in terms of your headcount in the company, what's the kind of percentage of technical roles, scientific roles compared to, say, sales and kind of marketing, commercial roles?
Yeah, at the moment we have approximately 40 people around, and the sales team is still small. I would say maybe 3+ people doing sales. What's very important, I would say, in the case of deep tech startup is that to use also technical people in the sales process, as they have to learn and they have to start to think about a bit like client. They have to understand client very well. So we don't have very sharp borderline between the technical team and sales team. The technical team itself is, let's say, around 25+ people. It's still large, I would say, to compare the sales and other people. But we have to keep in mind that we don't just have hardware, but we have also production technology. The most important and most probably difficult part was to develop the production itself, not so much the end product, but the production process itself. And it's, I would say, a very unique part, but also it's very good protection against competitors if you have very well developed production, let's say early mass production technology available.
Just to clarify that point, are you doing the hardware designs in-house? Are you actually also manufacturing the hardware as well, or are you outsourcing the manufacturing to a partner?
We have our own technology to produce, so it's in-house. In longer term, of course, I can call this is generation 0 or very early generation production technology, of course, and no reason to develop very final production technology, but it's already early mass production. We have robotic system to produce certain components, sub-components, and we had to develop as it was unique part of the technology. It also makes our company unique, as we are not the only Muon Tomography company around the world. There are, let's say, more than 10 companies, and now it's getting more and more. But our uniqueness is also coming from the fact that we have own production technology. In long term, of course, we don't know. We can outsource production or not. We don't know yet. But at least IP is owned by our company, how to do this.
Okay, great. No, thanks for clarifying that. So you're kind of moving into the 5th year. You kind of say you started commercially around 2020. So you're moving into your 5th year. You've mentioned there that you've reached around 40 people. So, what does the plan look like for 2025 moving into 2026 in terms of, where you are in your funding journey and how you see the plans for recruitment in the Cambridge office?
I think 2025 is really kind of defining year. As I said, we had the first recurring project last year, but 2025 we are really focused to get recurring cycle moving. One sign of this is that to get a lot of real life bridges and to get a lot of projects done with National Highway, with Network Rail, all these big asset owners in UK. So I would say this is the kind of very important phase in our go-to-market plan globally, as UK is our first big market, and also locally, that to really understand all the elements of market very well. And also we are hiring now a VP of sales, so really start to build up the sales team. It's very crucial, and definitely we do this in UK. But I would say all the startups, you have to be global minded in some sense. You have to think about your first market. You have to really very, very sharply focused on your first vertical, but also geographically you have to be very focused. But in somehow your backbone, you have to keep thinking about the global market. That you have to continuously think that, okay, what I do now, how easy is to scale up this? As in startup world, you continuously have to think about how to scale up things. If you can't scale up, then the value of the company can be 10 even 100 times lower. But if you can really show your investors that the scaling up is coming, and you think about that, and you can articulate your business plan very clearly, then it can boost up your value very, very significantly. And especially in deep tech sector, I have to say it's very important. As in deep tech, we somehow tend to forget. We believe that our technology is very unique and we have a very clever team and so on. And time to time, I can see that the deep tech startups, they tend to forget you have to also very deeply think about your business plan, business side.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. So, you touched on your previous connection to Cambridge and the fact that you've been impressed with the vibrancy of the cluster. So, how has that played out over the last few weeks and months? Have you got good support? Have you started to make those network connections within the city?
Yeah, I was so surprised that I started from January more or less full time in Cambridge, and if I think about the development speed, then it's crazy. I already have so many contacts in Cambridge. I even can't give the number at the moment. But it was also kind of surprising that especially Bradfield Centre is a nice place to be, as more or less every second evening there is something going on there. So it's really creates a network very quickly. To be honest, I was a bit skeptical before to be there, but now I can really see the benefit. If I compare, for example, against London experiences, then I would say that it's much quicker. London looks very big, very dynamic, but to build network, it's not the easy place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So how can people get involved? How can they reach out to you and make, I guess you're going to be recruiting, you're going to be looking for investment. So people listening to this, how can they contact you and get in touch and follow GScan? Yeah,
of course. Nowadays, LinkedIn is a very powerful tool. You can find a lot of information about GScan from LinkedIn. We are continuously updating. You can find a lot of information. You can, of course, reach me. I'm in Bradfield. Email is also a good contact point. Our webpage is also reachable. And also we try to have webinars, not every month, but at least 6 times per year. If you're interested really technology side, you can follow the webinar. And, always it's nice to see people in the physical world. Really happy to meet.
Yeah, you can't beat that face-to-face interaction, can you? Thanks so much for taking the time to have a conversation with us today. It's been really exciting, a really interesting technology. Great that you've chosen Cambridge. So, welcome to Cambridge. And we can't wait to just track your progress over the next, coming months and years.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Today's show was produced by Carl Homer of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner, Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech Podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It'll really help others discover the show.